Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the U Talk Show, where we ask valuable questions about society, where the value is in the answers and the discussion that we have. And today we are asking a question: immigration, friend or foe? In other words, is it good or bad? Of course. Before I rant on, what are your thoughts?
Hmm. Oh, I have thoughts. So, this actually ties into the rental crisis that we are seeing throughout Australia. I've seen a lot of people pointing out that, if we reduce immigration numbers, that the pressure will ease
Can I cut in here with a
on
fact that is
rental
very
availability.
inconvenient?
No,
Can I
stop
cut
for
in
a
here?
second. No.
Okay.
And I've seen the very real counter argument that it's not immigrants, it's people who are using bloody Airbnb because they want to supplement their income by having a piece of property that is being rented for effectively far more than is ethical. And it's also been pointed out this anti-immigrant rhetoric is exactly what's desired. Do you remember just last recording we were talking about who is the real enemy
Mm,
and how
yeah.
it's oligarchs who seek to manipulate our lives.
Yeah.
They also manipulate our political discourse. Guess what's really great for getting people worked up for
Wow,
no
it's
reason?
almost as though I'm doing a whole
Immigration.
documentary on that, on how
Stop
they
it. Look,
manipulate political discourse.
okay. I'm hitting the counter, but also until you produce the documentary, you got to stop plugging the documentary, mate.
I'll try.
Now,
I really do need to get on that though.
immigration is a hot button topic. There's almost always someone with a strong view on it. But you know what? You know what immigration doesn't actually cause? Massive corruption. Truly massive corruption, incomprehensible scale, entire systems of government being run by the highest bidder. See, I don't think immigration is necessarily friend or foe. I think it's just a fact of life, and I think it's a convenient dog whistle to bring out the racists and the people who are worried but who don't quite know about what, and anyone else who wants to look like they have a useful opinion about the way society runs.
I really do need to jump in here. So
Mm-hmm.
so three things there. So first I have to say, in regards to racists, I mean, yes, they are out there, but I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again because it has been probably a long time now. I've met people in even Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and there is a surprising lack of racism compared to what is expected. Now, yeah, there's some, but most of them are just very worried about essentially the economic situation, living standards. These aren't people who are, even in the lower middle class. These are working class people who essentially they're doing two things. They're looking for answers and they're looking for
Yeah.
solutions. And someone like Pauline Hanson or, insert insert stock standard shit politician number five here, they'll give them this really convenient and easy answer, which is, oh, it's all the immigrants' faults. It's they're the
Yeah.
problem and they're taking the jobs, and we'll give you your jobs back by not having any of it. But they're wrong. Now, don't get me wrong, immigration can have positive and negative effects. And I think that brings me to the second point, which you said you kind of see it as a bit of a fact of life, which I find it as an interesting
We
perspective.
cannot put the genie back in the bottle regarding jet travel. We just can't.
Well, true, true. But I more see it as a tool. Like, when it's kind of like a tool, but it's a tool that is often misused. In Australia, it was misused throughout the entirety of the previous like decade long Liberal government in New South Wales and federally, as essentially it covered our how do I put it? It covered a reduction in wealth by adding to the
Yep.
overall GDP. So while for years, since 2018, GDP per capita was falling, GDP numbers kept growing but it was very artificial and due to immigration. So it was a tool that was being misused. A steak knife is really good for a steak, but you don't want to use it on a person because that hurts.
Whoa, what's the?
I know. I wanted a very visceral metaphor there. Basically, if you fuck up the use of a tool, it can end badly. Now, that being said, I'm just going to list a few like benefits and downsides, and some things that can be a bit of both. For example, one of the upsides of immigrations is that immigrants start small businesses at a higher rate than native-born people. This is anywhere in the world. This is the case. Yep. And someone actually did a breakdown of it. I forget who, and I forget where the goddamn video was. If I can find it, I'll link it. I make no promises about that because it was a long time ago. But they do start businesses at a higher rate than native-born. Anywhere.
Still remember.
And there's also the value of different perspectives. Now, different perspectives and different experiences in life can be very insightful. It can teach each other things. I always say that everyone has wisdom to share. Now, not everyone has a lot of wisdom to share, but everyone has at least a nugget, at least one thing. Now, that being said, alongside that, there is also the potential for such large differences that it ends up getting disruptive. That's where we get like cultural shocks between, different cultural groups. And that can cause society to lose a bit of cohesion. Sometimes you do even want that, but generally speaking, it can be a bit too disruptive. You want it to be, like maybe like a 3 out of 10 disruptive, not like an 8 out of 10. Once you get past 8 out of 10, that's, you get some really bad stuff, like Cronulla riots type stuff, for anyone who remembers that back in the day.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. Then there's also, with its misuse, we've seen that like Sydney and Melbourne, for example, they're getting more dense. More so Sydney than Melbourne, though. Again, New South Wales had a terrible government for a decade. But essentially, high density cities, they tend to be overdeveloped and overpopulated messes. And Sydney is very rapidly becoming that. And one of the biggest downsides in that is that stress on infrastructure does eventually outweigh the benefits of a larger tax base. So having a bigger Australia doesn't necessarily mean we have a better Australia. You got to find the sweet spot. The last thing,
having a bigger Australia doesn't necessarily mean we have a better Australia.
Yeah.
That's your thinky thonk for shorts right now.
Perhaps. But there's the last thing that I wanted to get into, which I keep forgetting because my mind is just all over the place right now. It was one of the first things you said. Right. That immigration was blamed for higher rental prices.
Yes.
Straight up, it's not. What's to blame for higher rental prices are greedy landlords, greedy corporations who have put prices up because they can, and they use the pandemic as an excuse, and that's what's also causing inflation. And also that around half of all rental properties are kept deliberately off the market in order to drive up prices. And this is not just something that's happening here in Australia. This is happening all around the world. 70% of luxury apartments, we're talking ones that would sell for millions upon millions of dollars, like 5 million and above, some up to 17 million. 70% of them are vacant. 70% of those are vacant in New York City. And, there are more reasons for that than just, to keep the price high. But that is one of them. And so we can't blame immigrants for problems that were essentially caused by our real enemy. And that is a greedy corporate elite who are acting as parasites on society. Anything you want to add just before we go?
I think it's also worth pointing out that there are a lot of people who hold this conviction deep down that they too can make it. You know, if they're willing to take a chance, if they're willing to dream big, and those people are exploited to the hilt by corporatist media, because if you can get the people who have a dream to turn against the people who don't, well, that's just another wedge that you can put in the population. And we see a lot of talk about like mum and dad landlords and mum and pop businesses, and it's like, you guys need to just shut the hell up, because all of those mums and pops believed that you would make their lives better and you didn't. And for you to be talking for them, the ones that were dumb enough to vote for you anyway, the ones who were dumb enough to vote against their own interests, the ones who were shamelessly manipulated,
Hey, it's the name of my
it's an
documentary.
insult.
Now it's a game. I just want to see how many times I can work it in. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I got nothing else to add to that. We finishing?
Yep.
That's good because I've got the title of our next episode: "The Australian Dream is Dead."
And
See you
this
then,
will be so
everyone.
sad. Good night.